first off, I just want to thank you all for having me. I've been attending these meetings for about 5 months now, and just thoroughly enjoyed myself. Just a wonderful group of people, and I appreciate you all welcoming me into the Newport Mesa Conservative Circle, and it's been a lot of fun. Secondly, I'd like to thank the person that makes this all possible and is my support system, and that's my beautiful wife, Tony Capitelli, in the back there. I'd also like to thank my campaign staff. Tonight we have Joyce Basile here. She's my fundraising director. She's been working very hard for me. Just a little bit about my background. I work for Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. I've worked for him for about 5 years. I'm an expert in immigration and international travel. Prior to that, I worked for Congressman Buck McKeon, actually up in the Santa Clarita Valley, which is where I'm originally from. Although when I worked for him, I lived here, so you can imagine what that commute was like. I also sold patio furniture for a couple of years. I was in sales, and I have a pretty extensive web marketing background. Now, tonight I'd like to do something a little bit different because this is the Newport Mesa Tea Party and not just the Costa Mesa Tea Party. So I'd like to talk a little bit broader, talk a little party politics, and then bring that back to how that's relevant in Costa Mesa and exactly what I want to do for Costa Mesa. So a couple of statistics I'd like to start with. About 40% of Costa Mesa residents are between the ages of 18 and 39. 10% of those are between the ages of 25 and 29. Just 4 years, 10% of Costa Mesans are that age group. About 60 to 65% of the group between the ages of 18 and 39 voted for Barack Obama in 2008. Most importantly, Barack Obama won Costa Mesa in 2008. That's, I believe, the only other city besides Santa Ana that he won in Orange County. So obviously things have changed slightly lately, but what's clear is that long-term, Costa Mesa is at risk. We've had some significant short-term achievements. There's no doubt about that. A $7 million surplus is a great thing. But unfortunately, these little battles that we're winning will end if we don't address the changing demographics in Costa Mesa. And that's what I intend to do with my campaign. So what I've done is I've narrowed it down to what I think are 3 primary causes that this has happened. The first being that Republicans tend to care more about winning than they do about driving a message. The second is that their message that they do have is ineffective. And the third is that we have a severe lack of effective messengers. So to the first point, you'll notice I don't say anything about Democrats because to be quite honest with you, that just doesn't do us any good. We've got to look within. To my first point about messaging over winning, what the party establishment likes to do to reach out to groups and to attempt to build coalitions is they give in on issues. For one, this doesn't work, and I'll use the example of Latinos. Latinos tend to be family-oriented people that are usually socially conservative, but the party establishment would have us stop talking about issues like abortion. Doesn't make any sense. That's how you build coalitions, is you find common ground. So not only does it not work, but what's the point? The whole reason we get into this thing is because we're fighting for a set of principles and values that we believe in. What's the difference? Let's use the issue of immigration for an example. What does it matter if a Republican or a Democrat is supporting a bad immigration bill? We lose either way. So if we're not driving a message, then what's the point of being involved in politics? And that brings me to my second point, which is the effectiveness in our message. Unfortunately, in addressing that, the only way we can do that is to look at our image. Remember, perception is reality, as bad as that sounds. And our cause's image is old, white male that only cares about money and budgets. Mitt Romney obviously didn't do a wonderful job of countering that for us. So what do we usually do to counter that? We talk about budgets and money. Now, those are important issues. In fact, it's the most important issue here in Costa Mesa. The long-term survival of our city, our state, and our federal government depend on fiscal responsibility. There's no doubt about that. But the unfortunate reality is that most people, that doesn't resonate with most people. And, it is what it is. And it's something that we have to deal with. We have to find ways to reach people. And what does reach people is when something directly affects them. We're seeing that now with Obamacare. Obamacare, initially in the abstract, everybody loved it. Well, we didn't love it, but the majority of Americans loved it. And now, well, you know the story. So, the effectiveness of our message has got to be something to where people actually care about it. As much as we care about something, we've got to reach out, because otherwise we're at serious risk. Here in Costa Mesa, we have a unbelievably hostile and divisive political culture, and Tom addressed that a little bit early on. I'm not going to lay blame to anybody for that, although I have a few ideas. But the reality is that we can't contribute to it. As hard as it may be to react, we can't do it. Candidates and elected officials here have got to stay on message, and we've got to stop getting into the weeds of these arguments, because it's not doing us any good long term. We have to present a positive vision to Costa Mesa for a long-term survival. And that brings me to my third point, which is the effectiveness of our candidates, or lack thereof. Now, when I talk about an effective candidate, somebody who can effectively deliver a message, I'm not talking about pandering. I'm not talking about finding somebody from a particular demographic to appease that demographic. What I'm talking about is somebody who has the ability to talk to voters on their level and where they're at. In the age of information technology, most voters are online. I have a 10-year background in web marketing. I've done everything from web design to social media marketing to search engine optimization. We have about 110,000 Costa Mesa residents. These are a couple rhetorical questions, but how many of them do you think actually sort through their mail versus how many of them are on Facebook? How many people actually read a newspaper anymore? What good is an effective messenger if nobody hears them? We need candidates and elected officials that understand that and have the ability to deliver that message where voters are at. And if we don't do that, again, our long-term security here is at risk. So let me go back a little bit to Costa Mesa and a little bit of my background in Costa Mesa. I've been a Costa Mesa resident for about 7 years. I chose Costa Mesa. I previously lived in Irvine. This is no knock on Irvine, but it doesn't have Costa Mesa's character. Costa Mesa has so much to offer a young couple. Unfortunately, you have to seek it out to find it, and I'll get to that in just a bit. But what sold Julie and I long-term was our wonderful activist community, more specifically our faith-based community. We attend Christ Lutheran Church in Costa Mesa, where I serve on the Board of Education. I'm also our church's representative on an organization called the Church's Consortium for Homelessness. And what organizations like this demonstrate is that government doesn't have to be the answer. We want to help people, but we just don't think that government is the best at it. The community development model targets both self-reliance and charity, because we are a charitable people. And the reason I bring this up is because these are the kind of positive things that we're for. We are for helping people. We are for offering everybody an opportunity to succeed. We're for allowing families to raise their children in a nice community. We're for allowing local entrepreneurs to have an opportunity for success here in small business. And this finally brings me back to my, or I should mention my 4-point plan for Costa Mesa. It kind of furthers this positive vision. The first thing is to enhance Costa Mesa's appeal. That very same appeal that brought somebody like me here. We need more of, and it needs to be apparent. And the way we do that is through infrastructure spending. We do it through street safety for children, cyclists, and pedestrians. That's both a public safety and a community character issue. And we promote a business-friendly environment. What's important, though, and that brings me to my second point, is maintaining Costa Mesa's character. Because the reality is we're not Irvine. We have to ensure that developments add value to the community rather than diminish it. That's important because we want to have value as a community. My third point is to prioritize community development. What I just talked about with the Churches Consortium. That model works. As limited government activists, we believe in helping people and we believe in self-reliance. We just don't believe that government is best at helping people with those two things. So that model needs to be prioritized. And finally, my fourth point is to improve public safety. This is kind of an overarching principle. It includes some of the other three, including road safety. But we also have some specific issues with motel code violations and crime that we have to deal with. And as mentioned, we now have an increase, especially in property crime, to where I think we can do some good with enhanced resident communication. There are little steps that we can take to notify residents of things they can do to help us there. What I'm trying to do in all this is to attract a new generation of Costa Mesa residents and to attract a new generation of Costa Mesa voters and to bring a new generation of Costa Mesa activists. Because if we don't, our long-term future is at stake. We can ask people to be part of the fight all we want, but the reality is that most people want to be part of the solution. And for that, I need your help, and that's why I'm running for Costa Mesa City Council. I need your help in terms of donations, volunteers, but most of all, I need your help in terms of prayer. To me, that's the most important thing that we can do for our city. I have my first fundraiser in January. It's going to be January 18th. It's going to be at a place called Onochir Wine Country on Bristol. I have some invitations in the back. I'd love to have you there. If you want to find out more about it, either come to me or go up to Joyce. She's my fundraising director, and she can take care of that for you. But there are a number of issues facing Costa Mesa, so what I'd like to do now is to open it up to any questions.
I have a question on campaigning.
Sure.
I am so tired of being politically correct. If somebody is a liar, call him a liar. Don't say that he's not telling the truth or it's
Right.
whatever they're using it. Because if two people are campaigning and one person says, I know that this man was lying and here's why, and somebody else is saying, well, he said an untruth, I'm going to put my money on the guy that says he's a liar. Okay. I don't know why we have to be so politically correct. It seems to soften the campaigns. They're just kind of talking and they're not really stating exactly how they feel. I don't know. I'm probably wrong, but in this group of people, I'll bet you that more people would like to have somebody told that he's a liar or he's not a liar than speaking that he's untruth. It's just
you're right in that we shouldn't have to do that. Our opponents will do that. Unfortunately, if we want to attract voters from my generation, we can't do that. We've got to be better than that. We've got to stay on message, otherwise we're just going to turn people away, and we're seeing the result of that pretty clearly on a federal and state level. And what I'm saying is that will soon happen here in Costa Mesa. So I understand where you're coming from. Trust me, I deal with constituent phone calls all day long at the congressman's office. I wish I could say whatever I wanted, but we just can't.
Have you found a good method to communicate to the young adults, adults with children in the school? We have one mom in the hills in Santa Ana who had a mom's Common Core meeting in her home Friday at 10 a.m. And when the kids are in school, even the young ones would probably still be in school, in kindergarten, first grade. And she had 27 come out. 25 were moms with young children or elementary school children. So I found from that 10 o'clock on a Friday morning works to pull out the young moms. So have you found a method, because it seems like most of the evening meetings, they aren't really there?
Right. Well, you know, that's a struggle. And that's something that, frankly, we need all your help with. Most people my age and younger get their information on things they're going to attend from Facebook and Twitter and those avenues. So for one, we've got to all be on Facebook and Twitter. We've got to be active, because that's the way we're going to reach people. Two, we've got to start advertising things in a way that appeals to them. And what I've done with my campaign message is address it in a way to where it actually affects people. Most people my age really enjoy communities where there is a cycling culture. I'm not talking about sports cycling. I'm talking about a place where you can walk and ride your bike to your local grocery store and things like that. That's something we need more of in Costa Mesa, and it's issues like that if we target, will attract more people like me, because they care about that. In fact, I met a student that goes to OCC, and he's starting a movement to try to make Costa Mesa more bike friendly, because that's what he cares about. And there's a few issues like that to where we can target and advertise. Tom?
Yeah, I was intrigued with your concept of getting the community involved in some of these projects and developing things, like the homeless effort that you're doing. What other things have you thought about, and how are you going to get, say, the business community involved in something like that?
Yeah, you know, I think what targets that is number two, maintaining Costa Mesa's character. With regards to the business community, we have a wonderful arts and entertainment shopping area in South Coast Plaza. I do think, though, what's happening is that small business owners are being left behind. I think oftentimes we've even seen the council target certain types of small business owners. I think there are things that we can do for small business owners to get them involved and show them that that's where our focus is, and not Macy's or Bloomingdale's, but Onotrio wine country. You know, those are the kind of areas where we have to show them that, it may sound silly, but that we care. And I think we'll be more productive in identifying groups like that.
I really like your message. I try and say we care first, but I'm a finance guy, so I want to thank you for paying for our Social Security and our pensions. But
Right.
on a serious question, Obamacare,
Right.
that's the gift that's going to keep on giving for all these people who care.
Right.
So your demographic might be waking up.
You're absolutely right, and that's, you know, I mentioned that briefly. Unfortunately, what's happening, though, is we're not being given an alternative. Obamacare is absolutely, I have to go on, sign up for Obamacare. My wife and I are signing up currently, and it's just awful. It's like, it's been such a headache. I work for Congress, by the way, and we do have to do that. But what's not being offered is an alternative. You haven't seen a vision. What do Republicans want to do about health care? What do we want to do as an alternative? We talk about things like tort reform and interstate commerce, trade, and things like that. But we don't have a package. And until something's offered, until we show people that we have an alternative, because the reality is people care about health care. People want everyone covered, especially people my age. We have to start offering alternatives. Luckily, we haven't had to at this point because it's just so bad.
But actually, on the same message, sorry if I had another question.
Right.
I've been after Obamacare for a year, and I've read the law, and I know this problem, and I'm just so glad that people are starting to wake up.
Right.
But there are multiple, I agree with you, there are multiple alternatives out there. You go to Heritage, you go to Cato, you go to many of the think tanks, there are tons of them, but you have to look for them. And he's right. I went to all his websites. I know where they have them. You got to get it out there, and it's simple.
Well, and Obamacare is a unique issue,
Yeah.
too, because it affects us federally, at state level, and here at a city level. So it's got a broad range of
With
issues.
this having such a big effect on your generation, do you think that just allowing any insurance company to cross state lines to share their product is a good thing? or a bad thing for you?
I don't want to get too much into federal issues here, as I do work for Congressman Rohrabacher. But I'm for more competition whenever that's possible, because what Republicans have failed to address is the benefits of competition. We haven't properly talked about how that lowers costs. Currently, a lot of industries in the United States, we have 3 or 4 big companies that run the industry. So of course it's going to look bad because these giant corporations run like government. That's how they run, because they're monopolizing industry. We haven't actually shown, for instance in the healthcare industry, what it can look like with effective competition. One area of healthcare we have is plastic surgery. Plastic surgery is a unique area of healthcare to where competition has been allowed to flourish, and I won't talk about the procedures that are available, but I can tell you that they're pretty cheap.
Well, one quick question on this Unaffordable Health Care Act called Obamacare. I don't know enough about it. Who controls the price that's charged? Is it just Obama that does it?
Right.
Or does it require some other parts of the government?
The insurance companies have to abide by certain regulations.
Right.
And because they have to abide by those regulations, as an example, they have to allow people with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, who determines the price?
The insurance companies determine the price,
Yeah.
but they're being so affected by regulations that the price is so darn high.
Okay.
The only freedom they're allowed is with age. So you'll see costs a lot lower for younger people. For older people, the cost is really high because insurance are allowed flexibility, and it's one of the only areas that are allowed that.
What you're missing is what I'm trying to get at. Just trying to find out who determines those prices.
Right.
And the reason I'm asking is because I think that the Obamacare is just this number 2 step in what he's got planned for our nation. I won't go into the rest of them. But once Obamacare is fully activated and there's no other competition because all the other insurance companies are going to go broke,
Right.
then who's going to control it? Because my feeling is that once that's all done, somewhere down the line, then Obama, if he's the one that controls it,
Right.
he can start raising that even if he
Sure.
can't raise the
Yeah,
taxes.
you're absolutely right.
Getting back to local issues.
Sure, yeah.
You mentioned that, you know, as a young couple,
Right.
you were interested in coming, the city had a lot of appeal to you.
Right.
And but you moved from Irvine, which had a great school system, to Costa Mesa, where the kids are, all the kids on our street are going to Edison,
Right.
or Newport Harbor. And that, I don't know what the city can do about that. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, unfortunately, the city's pretty limited when it comes to education. I'm on the Board of Education for Christ Lutheran School, private school in Costa Mesa, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to tier their price system so that it's affordable. It's basically going to be the same price as sending your kids to YMCA after school. They're trying to make it affordable enough to attract people to private school, and unfortunately, those are our only alternatives. And I'll mention quickly, one of my potential opponents, Katrina Foley, has been the one pushing this Common Core on us. And you know, you talk about diminishing the quality of education here locally. Even though it's not a city issue, it may end up being an election issue just for that reason. So,
Is there some help to maybe charter schools and things
Sure.
like that?
yeah, I mean,
Get involved?
yeah, you know, like I said, unfortunately, a city has very little impact when it comes to local education. But there are some things that you can do in promoting after-school programs and things like that. But, you know, we'll see how that plays out.
There's scriptures about who we help. There's, of the homeless, there's people that really are homeless inadvertently and accidentally. And then there's there that are just professional leeches, gypsy, panhandlers, that's their career. Biblically, it says to honor thy father and mother, but that's really only the ones that are left after you get the fornicators out of the gene pool. Feeding the, helping the poor are the ones that are left after the same thing.
Right.
She does not order us to honor the unhonorable. And so,
Well, that's why government can't get involved, because private organizations are so much better at being efficient with their resources, and they're able to better target people like that. When government gets involved, it becomes this huge bureaucracy, and we end up wasting a bunch of money. When community development organizations do it with that model, not a charity model, community development model, pushing for self-reliance, they're able to address that. Anybody else?
I have a question. When is the next election? the city council?
Not-
And
yeah.
Who's running?
Not till November 2014. You know,
Next year.
yeah, we've got a little ways to go. So basically we have
Not long.
Jim Righeimer's up for re-election and Wendy Lease is termed out. So I'll be running for city council, but generally that's probably where the competition's going to be. So I'll leave it at that. Anybody else? Yeah.
One is a little bit on the first question. I know you were saying that, I think we're the same generation, so
Right.
you're saying that our generation doesn't want, you know, you to point out for someone to say you're a liar or whatnot, but if you look at the last campaign for presidency,
Right.
I mean, after the first debate with Mitt Romney and President Obama, I mean, he did a fantastic job, and he had a lot of the women, they were all on his side, and even the Republican, I mean, everyone was on his side. But then the second one, you saw him just kind of play the, you know, the role that you're kind of saying. So I'm just saying, don't be too afraid to say, no, you're a liar. Even,
Right.
yeah, and you can say, and you can back off, and you don't have to get to the tone that our vice president got to during the
Right.
vice president debate. But at the same time, it's okay for you to stand up and say, you're wrong, this is what I firmly believe in,
Right.
because your passion comes out.
Well, what you mentioned there is so important in that, and that's tone and clarity. There are ways to deal with this sort of thing without personally attacking people and without sounding angry. And I think that's what's most important in addressing those kind of issues, because the reality is, you're right, the other side is vicious. And we have to address that somehow. But if we address it with anger, we end up turning away more people than we attract. So that's the
Hi, I live in Fountain Valley, and I've had experience with the Fountain Valley City Hall meetings, and I really, really get disappointed and angry when 250 of us show up and the City Hall says, oh yes, we've listened to all of you, now this is what we're going to do. And they say they listen to you, but they ride roughshod right over you. I worked here in Costa Mesa for 23 years at first it was Nurseryland and then Armstrong Garden Center for 23 years, the same location. So I've sort of like grown up with you young people. I saw you when you were little kids and saw you be able to build homes and make your own home instead of like looking like a tract home. You made it your own personal, really neat home. And I still think that's wonderful, but I sure hope you listen to your constituents if you are elected, because it's really important to listen to the people who live in your neighborhood and in your city, instead of just running right over them and not addressing their real concerns.
Right. It's funny that you mention that, because I talk about information technology and social media. I've had such an incredible opportunity through Facebook and Twitter to meet with so many Costa Mesa residents through this process. And I'm making a commitment to each and every one of you. I have my business cards in the back. It has my phone number and email address. I'm ready to sit down for coffee, whatever you want, a phone call with each and every one of you and talk about what you care about here locally. So I'll make that commitment to you. It may take a little bit of time, so be patient with me, but I'm there.
Tony, what do you think about the charter?
I'm for a charter. I think it has long-term benefit to Costa Mesa. I do think, however, that we went about the process a little hastily the first time, and we saw the results of that. Now with the charter committee, I think we're going to have a lot more success this time around.
What do you think about the public pension situation? And by the way, the public pension debt for Costa Mesa just went up $32 million.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, you know,
Next year.
unfunded liability is an issue that plagues all of us. And for the long-term stability of Costa Mesa, although it's not one of my 4 points for my campaign, that's the overarching most important issue, is pension and budget issues. Those help us do the rest of the things that I'm talking about. I'm talking about how you present that to people. When you just talk about pensions and budgets, people tune out. And what you have to do is inform them how that applies to them. And so you're right. There's an important issue there, and I, I tend to address it for sure. Anybody else?